for attending on, instead of sitting out in the garden and having the first barbecue of the year. Oh gosh, what a turnout, how fantastic. I've just been thinking, if you were all in your cars now, the line would stretch from, let's see, probably the Opera roundabout all the way to the M25. Seriously though, thank you very much for coming, and I hope you find this evening very interesting. Our speaker is the Senior Project Manager for the M25 A3 Junction 10 project, Jonathan Wade. He's been working on this project now, he told me yesterday, for 8 years. He started off in 2018, and the project is due to finish around about June, so it's been quite a major project. I'm sure we've all had a good opportunity to see it at first hand. Fine if you're not in a rush, but if you're heading for Heathrow, it can be a little bit frustrating. But I'm glad to say most of it's done now. So we're going to talk about, Jonathan's going to talk about the whole project, what it entails. He's also going to talk about the new Cockrow Bridge, which is the first heathland bridge in the UK. I had the pleasure of having a little preview of it yesterday, and I think it's going to be very interesting, very exciting. He'll talk about that. Just a quick word, first of all, to say that Nikki, our communications manager, is going to record this evening's meeting, mainly Jonathan and the presentation. However, we will have time for questions and answers after Jonathan's presentation, so just bear in mind that your question may be recorded, just your voice, not your visuals. So without any further ado, I'd like a big East Horsley warm welcome for Jonathan Wade.
Steve, thank you very much. Is that okay? Can everybody hear that? Yes. Right, brilliant. And can you all see the screen? You might just need to knock off one or two of the lights. Good. There we go. Is that better? Good. Right, as Steve said, Jonathan Wade, Senior Project Manager. I've led this scheme since the beginning of 2018, so that's all through its preliminary design, then the planning application that we put in. Then the whole project was delayed for the past 18 months, whilst the Secretary of State considered aspects of the scheme, and then finally into construction from 2022 onwards. I'm not going to, on all these pictures, on all these slides, there aren't that many words. I don't like words on slides, it's far better to have pictures. But just some of the reasons why we're undertaking this, a key one, the two top ones are real key ones. Improved journey time reliability for Junction 10, and that's in any direction, that's on the M25 or the A3. And the second one was to reduce collisions. Those were really the two primary ones. We've got various other ones, and we'll talk about some of those in just a minute. So before we do anything, before we start looking at the scheme, what we did, any aspect, we have to look at some of the constraints which exist. And there you've got the same map in each case, and you've got Junction 10 right in the middle. This is off a system called Magic Mapping. It's a DEFRA system. And it's one where you can look at all manner of constraints. It might be heathland, it might be, if it's coast, it's coastal aspects, but you can select different layers. And straight away you can see that Junction 10 is surrounded by some quite important designations. The one on the top right, special scientific interest, I'm sure many of you will be familiar with that expression. Heathland, certainly, important bird areas, certainly, common land, certainly. But as far away, the most important one for us always has been the one on the left, the special protection area. In fact, it's Thames Basin Heath Special Protection Area, and that is collectively these constraints mean that this is the area around the junction is regarded as a European site, and that's just about the highest environmental designation you can possibly get. So that's where we started doing some work. Second constraint is the volume of traffic. Around about 270,000 vehicles passing through Junction 10 pretty much every day. Same on weekends. The only difference at weekends, it tends to be about 2 hours or so later. People don't get up quite so early, and then they go off to the events on Saturday and Sunday evening. you've got the A3, around about 80% of the traffic on the A3 wants to get onto the M25. So the one part of the A3 that we've never touched is the bridge actually across the M25. It was 2 lanes, still is 2 lanes. Traffic volumes just don't want it anymore. And if you think about it, the M3 as it comes through underneath the M25, it's actually down to 1 lane. That's the level of traffic, so it's southbound. Second most accident rate on the M25. The worst is one of the junctions on the northern side, somewhere around the M1. But we were seeing, on average, for the 5 years before we started, 244 collisions of some description per year. That's 2 collisions every 3 days. In a lot of cases, because of the traffic congestion, they were minor, but nevertheless, as soon as you have a collision, everything goes down. And there's just a few pictures to support that. One of them, which one is it? Yeah, partway through our works, bottom right-hand one. The third constraint is the number of stakeholders around here. I'm not going to go through all of those. All of those white ones are stakeholders with whom we've had to engage, in some cases on an occasional basis, in some cases much more regularly. In some cases, some parts of the scheme and some at others. So I'm not going to go through all of them. If I pick, let's say Silvermere Riding School, just for an example, that's down Red Hill Road. When we took down Clearmount Bridge, which is the one across the M25, that immediately restricted the areas that the riding school could take their horses. So for every one of these, there's a story. So it's quite a tough environment to work in. And what we're doing here is carrying out some really big civil engineering works, major civil engineering works. It was one of the biggest civil engineering schemes in the south of England. So what does it actually provide? Well, it wasn't just Junction 10, it isn't just Junction 10. The scheme extends over 12 kilometres, and that's M25 or A3 or some of the local roads that we've been working on as well. So one of the things was the reconstruction of the gyratory right in the middle, that's at its heart, and then widening the A3 from Upton Park roundabout right the way up to Payne Hill, excepting the bridge across. So 3 to 4 lanes. The A3 is not a motorway, never was a motorway, but even before we started, it was 3 lanes, so it looked, to all intents and purposes, like a motorway. As part of the scheme, we severed access to a number of properties along the road. Go back to the collision rate. Why the number of collisions? In a lot of cases, it's people slowing down, speeding up, running into the back of each other. So the key part of the scheme always was to sever accesses from all the properties up and down the A3. And in doing so, we needed to provide an alternative. The most obvious one of those is Horsley Lane, that leads off through to Horsley Village, Perfect Rock and the Royal Horticultural Society site. So that's why these yellow roads, the construction for Surrey County Council, that's why we're undertaking those. Upton Park roundabout and the works that have been carried out there, and the Payne Hill at the top. And also there's a little bit of the A245 right at the top end of the scheme, if anybody knows it, between Payne Hill roundabout as far as the Seven Hills Junction. There's some widening on that as well. And there's a little bit of work down in Ripley Village, that's some traffic calming, that's still to be done, that will be done later during the course of this year. Our site compound, I'm sure many of you will know where that is, just off roundabout. Technology, you might not have seen that as it came up, see all the dotted lines. Huge amount of technology has gone into the scheme in terms of overhead gantries. Another source of collisions is lane changes. People find themselves in the wrong lane at the wrong time and move over a lane without due care and attention. So a key part of this has always been good information, advanced information, getting people in the right lane at the right time. If you go into a junction in the right lane, you tend to come out of it in the right lane as well. So technology has always been an important point. The purple bit, pink bit, purple whenever it comes, colour it comes out of us. This scheme's not all about roads and road users, it's also about we use the expression non-motorised user, it's horses, cyclists, pedestrians. So that route now extends all the way from Ocken Park roundabout the right way up to Plainshill. It's not open yet, or at least not all of it anyway. And associated with that were 4 new bridges around the M25. 2 of them were replacement bridges, 2 of them are completely new. The one on the Cobham Services side of the Junction is a new bridge, and also the one on the north of Junction 10 is a new bridge. So, and that network of paths and tracks that connects with multiple other points of access, Redhill Road at the north, Ponters Road, Ockenbites, Wisley Lane, so multiple onward connections. So that was a skirting scheme. One we often get asked is, if we go and dig up the road somewhere and maybe somebody else is, why don't you liaise, why don't you engage, why don't you talk to each other? And we set up this group probably 4 or 5 years ago now, Western Corridor Coordination, and it has representatives of all of either the undertakers or the organisations carrying out works. Key amongst them is Surrey County Council, Surrey County Council's traffic manager. So it's all about coordinating works that have been taking place around the whole of the bottom left-hand corner of the M25. Some of those you'll be familiar with, and some of them are completed now. The oil pipeline that ran from Horsley right the way up towards Heathrow, that was completed some time ago. Much more recently is the near works on the M3. That's the emergency area refit, national emergency area refit piece of the work. Right down at the bottom you've got Taylor Wimpey and the airfield development, which is not long ago started and is really getting into its stride. And you've also got the Environment Agency carrying out flood alleviation works. So multiple projects there. Oh, and of course another really important one, which has still got another year to go, and I'm afraid quite a disruptive year, is the Surrey works at Junction 11, Chertsey. That's housing infrastructure project. So I'm afraid as Junction 10 perhaps gets a bit easier to get through, Junction 11 it might just get a little bit more difficult. So we've got that group that meets monthly with the various parties. It's all about coordinating. In terms of how we responded to the number of people, the volume of traffic. If you look at the top 2 photographs side by side, they're both taken from sort of pretty much the same location. And the one on the left is before we started, so you've got 3 lanes on the M25 and the hard shoulder. As part of the works, we did away with the hard shoulder a bit on a temporary basis, narrowed the lanes, but look at the amount of space with one in the middle to construct the bridge. What that meant is that we were able to carry on work 24 hours a day. We didn't have to keep shutting lanes on motorway. Sure, there was a 50 limit, and sure, some people don't like narrow lanes, but the point was we maintained 3 lanes throughout the works for pretty much all of the time. The bottom 2 photographs are exactly the same. We didn't have the benefit of a hard shoulder on the A3, so the outside lane was quite narrow. But again, it was all about winning the space that we needed to work on particularly the central piers on the bridges, and that's the construction of Wisley Bridge. The volume of traffic, there have been an accident a bit further up, but I'm sure many of you who've driven up the A3 will have experienced something like that during the course of the last 3 years. We also looked at how we construct these bridges. You can see that photograph up on the top looks like big bits of Lego. It's not quite big bits of Lego, but it's the same sort of principles. There's a huge amount of construction offline, made up in a factory. And I think it's a figure there, about 300 of these shells, these big concrete shells, and about 500 other segments. And this was all about making things up in the factory, get better quality control, because they're made indoors. And all you need to do is bring them to the site, drop them into place. So it's safer, it's faster, and it means we can construct bridges more quickly. And in this environment, that's important. It's not the cheapest method of construction at all, and it wouldn't. It certainly wouldn't work in every area. If you look at current project which we've got on the M3 Junction 9, this kind of construction wouldn't have worked as well there. we had some of my colleagues down fairly recently from M62, M60. It's called Semester Island, and that's where the Manchester Ring Road and the Trans-Pennine motorway link, and they're exactly the same criteria as us. So they're looking at this as a means of keeping the disruption there. And there you can see at the bottom again. This is Wizard Bridge, nice, clean looking site. Let's go on to some of the closures. This is a little diagram we put together quite some time ago. And look at the key as well. The little red hoops are bridges that we needed to take down. Blue ones are bridges that we needed to construct, and the orange gantries are gantries, information gantries. So I think there are 31 structures that needed to be put into place over either the M25 or the A3. Some of the smaller ones, some of the little orange ones, they're just half gantries. We were able to do those at night. Most of the bigger ones we needed to do on a complete closure. And what we did, when we just sort of thought about this, something was really important was how many of these can we combine, how many of these can we do at the same time. And I've got a photograph coming out which gives you a bit of an idea. If we're going to shut the M25, we're going to shut the A3, how can we do it in the most efficient way? How can we get the maximum amount done during the course of those closures? So this diagram really just sets out how many of these closures we needed. So let's have a look at bridges. Were probably the biggest part of this scheme. We had to demolish in total 5 bridges and construct 8. So I'm just going to go through some of those structures. Stratford Brook, great big bridge, considering that there's only a small brook underneath it. But a lot of the area around it is floodplain, so the bridge appears to be far bigger than it actually needs to be. It isn't when you take into account the flooding in the area. So the first one, out of sight, out of mind. Very few people knew we were doing it. And I'm sure many of you have now driven across it without necessarily realising. But it gave us a bit of an opportunity to practice a bit. You can see the airfield in the background if you want to sort of reference where exactly you are. Second bridge was Wisley Bridge. That was the first closure we put in place. That was a closure of the A3 for a complete weekend. A story coming up that later if we have time. We'll see when we get on. Third one, this is one of these NMU bridges, this non-motorised use route. The bridge is in 2 halves, and we closed the M25 just overnight. We lifted each half into place overnight. One weekend we did one, 2 weeks later we did the other. And right from the very outset, the bridges were designed so that they could be transported in a single piece. They're British made actually, so it's really good. Manufactured at High on Kent. But they were designed to be carried along as a single piece, lifted into place as a single piece. Again, it's all about, as far as we possibly can, keeping the disruption there. Nice looking little bridge. Some people don't like the colour, but when you if you stand on Junction 10, if it's on a really sunny day, it actually shines at you, so it looks nice. And if it's a really dull day, it blends into the background of the trees. So it's an interesting colour. And what I've said to people, the symbol of Scotland is the 4th bridge. That's painted brown, same colour as this, and if it's good enough for them. Then you get onto the gyratory. These are 2 big bridges. And we talked a few minutes ago about working in the centre of the central reservation. And you can see quite clearly on that these shells, the shape and form of some of these shells. When we put this into place, it was an incredibly hot day, May 2024, and I've never been more sympathetic for the guys working out on site. They cooked. It was, of course, it's all white concrete. The motorway surface is concrete, so that was reflecting the heat. The concrete beams, the heat was coming back. The guys worked very hard that weekend, and some of them were pretty much shattered at the end. And we've got the bridge the other side of the gyratory. Anybody who looks at aerial photographs will know that the gyratory is offset, and that's some traffic management issues as to why that was done. But constructing the second one, this one, lifting all the beams into place to build it, that's right next to the existing road, so we've got traffic on the roundabout continuing, although we shut the motorway, we haven't closed the A3 or the gyratory. And we really had to be careful about that and looked at what was the consequences of somebody watching the big cranes, watching the machinery, crashing into the back of somebody, and you know, how the problems would just accumulate for us. So we, for that particular weekend, we put sort of barriers up, so you couldn't see the bridge, but of course you could still see the cranes above it. It's not closed, but anyway. This one, Clearmount Bridge. When we first closed the M25, and we'll have a look at a picture of that in a minute, that was to take down the old Clearmount Bridge, which wasn't wide enough. Yeah, the widened M25, the widened slip roads needed more space. So with this bridge, nice little bridge, it's part steel, part concrete. That was constructed beside the motorway, somewhere between Chertsey and Junction 10. We had a big site compound on the left-hand side, so we used that for several different reasons. But one of them was to construct the whole of this bridge, and then over a week, just at one overnight, just a Saturday night, we jacked the whole bridge up, slid it sideways, and just shunted it down the M25 on wheels. Jacked it into place, and about 450 tonnes, so it's not the heaviest of bridges, but even so, still, to have done that in the time wasn't a bad go. And after one day, whether anybody really noticed, there wasn't a bridge there one day, and there was a bridge there the next day. But hey, there we go. Cockroach Green Bridge, we'll not dwell on that because we'll look at that in just a minute. And then the last bridge that we put in, Long Span Bridge, that's at Little Road just north of the junction. Again, that's not open yet, but nice little bridge. So that's bridges. Another major civil engineering phase of work. Anybody who drives south down the A3 between Junction 10 and Oakham Park will see on your left-hand side Baldermere. Baldermere is not, first it's a man-made, it's not a natural lake. Secondly, it's a reservoir as well. It's not a natural man-made lake. It's got a dam against it, and the A3 forms part of that dam. It burst, or strictly speaking, what happened is that sluices became blocked in 2021, and the Baldermere burst, its banks, and flooded the A3. The A3 was closed completely for 24 hours, and then for another 24 hours, only the upside lane was open. So Baldermere, needs to be taken seriously. It might look nice, but more so when you're doing big civil engineering stuff like this, it's not always good news. What we also had to do for this, we see some sort of net arrangements in. Firstly, we had to impound the fish, so the fish didn't get disturbed with what we were doing. And we needed Environment Agency licence for water impoundment and also fish removal. And all that was about widening the A3. We didn't actually widen the A3 into the lake, but we did need some extra space on the verge. So, with a lot of the vegetation now, some of the views across Baldermere are actually really quite nice. And if on the opposite side of the road is where this non-motorised user route goes, and if you're up on what's called Hut Hill, it's on your left as you go north, stand on top of Hut Hill in the afternoon, you get a lovely view across Baldermere. The A3 doesn't go any favours, but the view doesn't. Talked a bit about gantries and the information. That's these great big gantries that we've put up. Total of 19 of them have gone up. Each one of them tips the scales somewhere 300, 120 tonnes. One of the things about these gantries, and there's something to think about really, how long is it before all of your cars have got some kind of in-car display and you simply don't need these kind of structures? If I said 19 of these at 100 tonnes or so a piece, there's 2,000 tonnes of steel that's been hoisted up into the air, plus the columns that support it, plus all the technology that we've stuck on it. How many years is it before everybody's got in-car display and these kind of things are superfluous? Not yet. Anyway, that's the biggest of the whole lot, 6 metres long, and that sits up just south of Paints Hill Junction. These things are capable of, some of them are capable of providing information, some of them are just purely direction signage. I'm sure if you've driven up through the junction or up and down there, you'll see it. I said it wasn't just about building things, it was about knocking them down. This was one of the old gyratory bridges. Been asked a few times, could we have left them in place? Well, yeah, we could, but they would become an ongoing maintenance liability, so taking them down is a sensible thing to do. That's the M25 motorway you can see there. So we had from Friday night, 10 o'clock, through to the published time was 5:30 on Monday morning to take the bridge down and clear it. If you just look at that, first you've got to put in place the traffic diversions. Then see on the ground, on the surface, put a layer of plastic sheeting, thermal sheeting, then put down railway sleepers to protect the surface, then start working on the bridge, bringing in the plant machinery. And so you'd lost 8 hours before these machines had actually started doing any work. Yeah, we were into Saturday morning before we put the mechanisms in place to allow that work to take place. And when you knock a bridge down, I have to say it's a bit like if you have a milk bottle in the kitchen, nice small milk bottle, you drop it on the floor and there's milk and mess everywhere, just like this. Nice little compact bridge, you wouldn't believe how much mess it can make. There's the first bridge we took down. That's Clearman Bridge, the little one up in right in the foreground. A couple of reasons for starting with that one. Firstly, it wasn't one of the more complicated bridges. Secondly, things have gone awfully wrong with some of the diversion routes. We could have just swept all the bits to one side of the motorway and reopened the motorway. Wouldn't have wanted to do that, but nevertheless, because it's never been done before, there was some real trepidation on the part of National Highways as to what the effect might be. Across the press, all over it. We know that it was reported it was being reported in Australia, and it was reported in the United States that Chunk of London was coming to a grinding halt because the road was shut. We had on the morning, we had helicopters, the press had helicopters up, we had people camping out on the bridges to watch the mayhem unfold, and of course it never did. You see in this particular example, you've got work on the demolition of the bridge in the foreground, but just a bit further back, you've got another big crane sticking up. That's the first of the gantries going in. This is where we start thinking about, what can we do? How can we have 2 or 3 activities all going on at the same time? If you're going to do that, though, you have to start watching your logistics, where vehicles are coming from. You can't get construction, sort of demolition vehicles, past a big crane when you've got big loads suspended in the air. And similarly, the other way around, can't get vehicles up to the gantry and working on gantry, aspects of the gantry when the demolition's going. So a lot of logistics. We had a particularly good guy from the supplier, Alpha Beta. He never said much, but he was a guy that just could see how things would play out and pan out, and credit him for many of these major pieces of weekend work. It's not uncommon for us to be told, oh, well, I've driven through the works, I don't seem to be working, everybody's just sitting down doing nothing and all this kind of stuff. Become quite accustomed to that. But an awful lot is done at night, and this is just one example. This is one of the gyratory bridges. A little bit of logistics even about this one. There were, how many beams? That beam you can see hanging on the crane, there were 36 of those, so 72 of those needed to be put in during the course of the weekend. 36 on one side of the M25, 36 on the other. So you've got to watch the logistics. How do you get them there? So you've got a lorry here with 3 beams. So where does the lorry come from? How does the lorry turn around? Where does the lorry go afterwards? The lorry can't, you've got a big yellow crane there, it's outriggers, it couldn't go past that way. Where do the pedestrians go? Where do the people actually working in the area go? How do you keep them safe? interface with plant, man-machine interface is one of the causes of accidents. So keeping plant and people segregated really is important. Some of you, I'm sure, in the last couple of weeks will have gone through Ockham Road North, and it's been looking like that. So why is it? All sorts of correspondence came to us. Your contractor's done a bad job, they haven't planned it, they haven't designed it. Shoddy work, you put down too many shoes, I've heard a lot.
Been like that forever.
Right, let me explain why it's been like that forever. We had to go back now to some really old drawings, old Surrey County Council drawings. And this drawing, there's an extract there, it's dated 1972, and it's before the A3 was ever widened. It's one of the construction drawings for Ockham Park Roundabout, so this is sometime around about 1970s when Ockham Park Roundabout was built. And before then, the A3 used to come down where the slip road is, on the south side of the roundabout and off down to Ripley. And the old road has a drain underneath it. It's this one. It's this 375mm. It's a carrier drain, so 15-inch, not a big one. So when this flooding really started, we've got cameras every night. We've got cameras down Bits of Light to try and find out where the problem was. And we ultimately found that this carrier drain was collapsed where that red dot is. So what it was doing, it was just letting a small amount of water through. So as long as the rain didn't come down too hard, it could just seep through this pipe and then into Stratford Brook. But the amount of rain we had, January and February, completely overwhelmed it. So we had to dig down. Now, it all started getting very tricky here because it was around about 4.5 feet down below the old road formation, and when the roundabout was built, another metre of material was put on that. So this piece of pipe, this 15-inch pipe, was a long way down. And also, this picture, you've got BT ducts here. I can't remember what that one was. You've got another pipe up there. So Ockham Park Roundabout has always been a problem for us. The volume of services that were under it, it's not been an easy place to work. And you also have to watch, if you've got guys working down excavations, 2.5 metres, you've got to start watching the edge caving in. Then you've also got a concrete raft here somewhere. So the BT, there, that's concrete. There was a concrete raft protecting the BT. So as fast as we dug the hole, water was running out of the BT ducts, those clay ducts here. So in the end, we just couldn't put up with this gradual trickle, so we broke the BT ducts and water just gushed out. So I don't know where it was getting into the BT. But anyway, there's the repair. The damage to that pipe had occurred, I wouldn't like to say when, 10 years ago, who knows. It's certainly been a long time. And the pipe itself, if it was known on drawings in 1972, it's probably 70, 80, 90 years old. So there is your cause of the acute flooding which took place back in January, and probably one of the major causes of flooding that you've seen on at the end of Ockham Road North for a long time. So let's see what happens. And it drains into Stratford Brook in a way. Right, let's have a look at, it's one of the few slides where there's some words. And I'm starting to move on to some of the environmental works that we're doing. And this was an important one, this is national policy. And it goes back to what I was talking about the fact that Junction 10 is a European site. So in summary, the work which we wanted to do on this European site, we had to prove that there was no feasible, less damaging alternatives, i.e. we absolutely had to work at Junction 10. We couldn't put bridges over it, we couldn't just not do it. So how to prove that there was no alternatives? That was a first bar. Second one was there overriding reasons, imperative reasons for overriding public interest. This must be done. It's so imperative to the public that we needed to take some of this, some of the heathland, some of the land around the junction. That was the second one. And thirdly, if you're going to do that, you must put together a suite of compensatory measures. So this bar, complying with this, very, very high bar. When you looked at what we were going to do here, a permanent loss of 5.9 hectares of this really important special protection area, temporary loss of another 8.6, loss of invertebrate resource, and all sorts of other damage. I mean, you know, you're local, you've seen some of the trees cut down. So, what we need to do is put in place this package of compensation measures. The bar which we had to cross to get planning consent, and this high road protest, it is just about the highest bar there is from an environmental point of view. We're the only national highway scheme, any road scheme, to have yet to have gone to have had to cross that bar. And it was certainly, it wasn't guaranteed that we'd achieve that. So we need to put together this package of compensation measures, and we work very closely with Surrey County Council, the Surrey Wildlife Trust, with Natural England, with the Environment Agency, with the RSPB and the Forestry Commission as to what we could and should do to create this package of compensation measures. So one of them was replacement land. We needed to acquire a quantity of replacement land. It was at one stage going to be a bit higher than we've ultimately finished up. Certainly, what we put into the planning consent, the Secretary of State wanted it reduced. So ultimately, we acquired 50 acres of land. It's on the northwest quadrant. Anybody who knows it, it's called Part 1 Farm. So we acquired about half of the farm. What did I say there? Yeah, we planted last winter around about 5,900 trees and shrubs. National Highways got a bit of a reputation on a job on the A14, I think in East Anglia, for a lot of the planting being lost. It wasn't, for whatever reason, it wasn't my project, so I can't comment on it. So far, the losses that we have seen, about just over a year after it was done, the losses are coming out somewhere between 3 and 5%. The forestry guys themselves, the guys who put this lot in, it's not uncommon to see a plant loss somewhere between 20 and 30%. So the fact that we're achieving this kind of level is really good. The company doing this, absolutely top notch. They really understand trees, timber, forestry, really, really good bunch of guys. And it's all about, firstly, selecting the right kind of trees to plant, trees that are native to the area, trees that are going to thrive in the kind of soil conditions that you've got around here, and then carrying out the aftercare, particularly watering, just to make sure they take off. So anyway, that's Part 1 Farm. Part 1 Farm is actually split into 3 distinct different areas. Part 1 Farm 1 is the mixed planting, that last photograph. Part 1 Farm 2 is open. There's a little bit of work done there, but not very much. It stays as open pasture. And then Part 1 Farm 3, that was just thinning out some of the timber, and then to get more light and increase the biodiversity. So all that's open to the public. It will be transferred to Surrey County Council. It's contiguous with the heathland, with the common land, not heathland, on the north side of the junction. So that's that. On to Cockrell Bridge. This was the old bridge. I'm sure, again, some of you will be familiar with it. Come out of Rock and Bites, and you have this little narrow bridge to cross over. So the first picture is, now you see it, and the one underneath is now you don't. Probably right away. Right, why did we take it down? It's because it wasn't of sufficient span to allow for the wide A3 or the slip roads. So, having accepted that we had to replace it, and we had to replace it with a bridge that would carry vehicles to Surrey Wildlife Trust headquarters at Pond Farm, and also as a Scouts camp, butchering Scouts campsite. We then looked at, could we turn this into a green bridge? And this artist impression was one that was used. We needed to obtain extra funding for this. It wasn't part of the scheme. All we were supposed to do was just build a 5 metre wide NMU and vehicle bridge. So anyway, we ultimately secured an additional 4.8 million to turn this from a 5 metre wide bridge into a 30 metre wide bridge. So why then? Why is it so important? Hopefully you can see the colours there. If you look at the pink, that is existing heathland, the existing Thames Basin special protection area around the junction. All the SPAs to the south side of the junction, there's no SPA to the north. So light pink is what was there originally. The purple is some of the compensation measures. It's where we've taken down trees, taken down these Scots pines. Scots pine were only there. They were planted for pit crops for mines between the wars, not native, not local. So we took down a lot of those. So you can straight away see that there was some logic behind some of the areas we've taken down because it was connecting to existing heathland. And then finally you can see the green bridge in the middle. So it made sense to reconnect these two parts of the heathland. It wouldn't have made sense to put a green bridge over the M25 because there was just nothing to connect it to, not in terms of environmental importance now. So these things needed to be sort of taken into account. And why? What's the reason for a green bridge? There's a couple of links, I think, towards the back end of this. There's a very good YouTube video. A guy runs a website called Leave Curious. And he looks for good news stories on the environment, and he came down to see us, and it's a really good YouTube video about why green bridges are important, not just in this country but elsewhere. So there's so many reasons. It's not designed for deer and cattle, although obviously they can use it. It's designed for some of those heathland reptiles, some of those heathland species. And there's some of the reasons there. The population, if you start looking genetically at the population of some of the amphibians, reptiles on Wisley Common on one side, Ockham Common on the other, they're completely different strains, so this connects the two together. Reduces mortality as well. So in terms of the Cockroach Bridge, top left-hand photograph is fairly early on the stages of construction. They are June 2024. We've got the abutments on the London-bound side complete, not on the southbound. We had a lot of trouble here. There's a gas main goes diagonally across the A3. This should have been the first bridge to be built. Ultimately, it's been one of the last, simply because we had all sorts of problems. I'll get to touch on that in a minute. So by the time we get to January 25, just on a year ago, is we shut the A3, lifted all the beams into place. So that's that top right-hand photograph. The bottom, the left one, you put all these beams in place, then you've got a whole lot together. And these guys connecting all the steel, all the reinforcing steel, and then lots of concrete on top of that to lock the whole thing together. So again, it's something you don't necessarily appreciate. And then finally, March 2025, by that stage you've got a waterproofing layer on the bridge, and it's starting actually to look like a structure. Right, in terms of turning it into a heathland bridge, the bridge itself, as I say, it's got a roadway across it. We could have just let the heathland grow naturally, but what we did, we elected to translocate heathland from various donor sites around the commons. There's advantages to that. It creates wet scrapes and allows the common to regenerate, and it's natural turf cutting. And what it also meant then is that we could transplant these areas. You can just about make them out. There's a whole lot of patches down here, and there's some more on the other side. So we, just like turf cutting, we'll see in just a minute. And we've lifted that onto the bridge. The bridge, it's got a layer of sand, about 400 millimetres of sand across it. So plenty of depth for the heath to root into. There's the top right hand photograph of the machine. It's just like cutting turf, except bigger, much bigger, big pieces. And then these little tracked vehicles running up and down from the heathland. And anybody who's out in the heathland, maybe dog walking or just walking, last October, November, would have seen these things. They made an awful mess. They churned up the ground terribly. But they were doing a fairly important piece of work, and that was translocating heathland. You can see on the bottom left-hand side, it isn't just the bridge. That whole area here, all this lot, is completely man-made. The sand that's made out of, to bring it up to the level of the bridge, that all came from the M25, the size of the M25. We were on the M25, particularly on the Chertsey side. Huge amounts of sand came off, and with it we constructed this the hill. That's the bridge in December, the last sunny day in December last year. So that's what it looks like at the moment. These things here, the sandy bits, reptile motorways. Apparently, I'm afraid I'm not someone who's really into these creatures and understands them. But border cats, they like some space to dance, and they like to be able to run fast. So there's a couple of these parallel sand areas with obviously the heath on the other side that they can dart into. And what you can also see up there, we've got some of the tree roots. They've been located onto the bridge, and also stone, so it creates all sorts of habitats for creatures on the bridge. It's slightly inadvertently when we brought up and dug up some of these sections of heathland, some of the amphibians and reptiles were already in it and stayed in it, and found that they moved house. Anyway, it started to look nice. You see, you've got a road on the left-hand side of it. We won't particularly want people walking on it, and there's netting on it there to stop dogs getting on it, so that the creatures there are not disturbed. There's a cattle grid at one end. Again, anybody's familiar with the area, Horsley Common, there's some cattle graze the common, but because it's fenced. Ockham Common not so. So cattle will be able to get onto the bridge and walk across that, but we won't be able to get onto Ockham Common as well. A little bit about heathland restoration, just touched on it really. There's the Scots pine, lovely trees, dead straight, ideal for making thick plots. Well, I walked around just before that photograph was taken. In fact, that's one I took. And I just think to myself, look, in a couple of weeks' time, a lot of this is going to be swept away. Are we really doing the right thing? And there's not many occasions when I'm on the scheme and I've really just thought, hey, is this the right thing to do? And that was one of them, because you walk through the glaze, the sun was shining through. But it was the right thing to do for the benefit of the heathland. At ground level, the biodiversity really wasn't great at all. So that's the top left-hand photograph. The second one, top right, go to the bottom left first. Having taken the trees down, you're left with this, it's called humic layer, this layer varied in thickness, anything from about 4 or 5 inches to a foot. And that was all sort of branches, twigs, material that accumulated over the years. And the natural heathland, all the seeds were buried in the sand. So we needed to get rid of all this humic layer. So again, big bits of machinery like that looks a bit on the heavy-handed side. That's what we're doing, taking off that humic layer. And what you can see now, some of that humic layer has been piled up in some areas, so that creates a habitat in its own right. So the idea was to get to the position of that top right-hand photograph, which is what a lot of the common land looks like now, where you've taken it down to the the sand, and that's where the seed bank is, so that'll start coming through. And we saw some of it starting to come through last year. It's not a long, so it's not a short-term process. National Highways are into not only carrying out the work, but also funding it through Surrey County Council and Surrey Wildlife Trust for up to 25 years. So it's not just a case of dirt, make a mess, and then walk off. This is a long-term piece of work for all of us. And then creating some of these wet scrapes as well, which in the summer will dry out and in the winter be full of water. So that's what the heathland should look like in time to come, and I'm sure it will. And there's some of the belted gallery cattle that Surrey Wildlife Trust use. Bottom left-hand photograph, I talked earlier about taking a slice out of the edge of gold there. Some of the enhancements we've got to do there are reed beds, putting back new reed beds. Some of you will know taking down some of the trees on the Elm Lane side. That's all about letting more light in, letting more biodiversity, or improving biodiversity. So quite a lot of work done on there. Also looking at water quality. This contraption here, that floated in the surf river, floated in the lake whilst we were doing all the work on the A3 last year, and it's continuously measuring water quality, water temperature, and that way was feeding data, so we knew that if there was going to be any kind of contamination, we'd pick it up on these things, little things. Talked about gas just a few moments ago, and again thinking about disruption to the A3 and to the M25. There was a large gas main which ran beneath the southbound A3, quite big, best part of 2 foot down to 610. And we had to divert that. We're going to widen the road, we needed to divert it. But in 2 places it had to cross beneath the A3. So rather than put a trench right the way across, we sunk a pair of shafts. Then one of them is quite close to where Wisley Bridge now is. One of them is quite close to the derelict San Domenico Hotel. So in both cases, 2 shafts, 12 metres deep. One of them is 8 metres diameter, the other 6. And you've got a tunnel boring machine there, drop the tunnel boring machine down the hole, and that's bored a 1.4 metre diameter hole underneath the A3. And then we drop a piece of pipe down. That one left-hand photograph is a piece of pipe down the hole. I don't want military work and wasting effort. And that, when you put all that effort into creating the shafts and the tunnel, just to put a gas main down, and now those shafts are full of stone. The gas main's gone down, they've done what they were intended for. But I always think it's a bit of a shame, but some really lovely work. HP Tunneling did that for us. Some really astute gunners. And then this gas stopper pit is a valve pit. We needed to connect the new gas into the other one, so I was doing that. Almost finished, I think, guys. People, it's all about people at the end of the day, looking after people, keeping people safe. The top left-hand photograph, I haven't really touched on it. Once upon a time, we used to have big plan chests with drawings, and we couldn't get enough drawings. Nowadays, the whole thing's done digitally. And we have this room at the site offices, multiple screens, and we can put up plans on one screen and a program on another screen, and we use we operate on a drone over the site, so we can use a piece of software called Site Scan, so we can look at that's all to do with the levels. So we have these meetings. There was a principal one every Thursday, plenty of others, in this digital rehearsal room. Put all the engineers in, so we knew what we were doing for each week. Top right and mine, safety stand downs. We had safety stand downs around about twice a year. For all workforce, about everybody off the site, provide them with a bit of lunch, might be curry. They established a rapport with a really good company at Wisley Lane, who supported us on all of our closures and events like this. So really, really good food. and had a few games, all safety related, all thinking about safety, looking after people, getting just getting the workforce to think safely. You can't ram safety down people's throats. The worst thing you can do is just quote, you know, you must do this, you must do that, you must do the other. And Barclays have an excellent approach to it. It's called Make Safety Personal. It's all about thinking about you as an individual, how you, your family, and not just work, but anything you might do at home, about the impact on you as an individual for any kind of accidents. And we've had an astonishingly good record over the majority of the project. One of my routes, that was about it. On the left-hand picture, during these big weekend closures, I always provided lunch for the workforce. It keeps people on site, and that's just a bit of an expression of gratitude. The bottom right-hand photograph, again, because of these big weekend closures, certainly for the first one, it worked so well that we rolled it out in all the others. National Highways Regional Control Centre is at Godstone, and we co-located some of the project teams down there, along with the police, the fire service, the ambulance. So we were able to monitor and control what was going on not just the M25, but on regional roads, diversionary routes, and anything really in the region. So if there had been any particular problems anywhere, we had all the right people in the control centre, and we were able to respond. It was never actually tested. We never had anything that really caused us to make it work as it was intended. The worst we ever had was someone on the diversion route, a contractor turned up to repair some traffic signals, which happened to be on his worksheet. He hadn't appreciated that it was being used as a diversion route. So we sent our traffic control officer from one direction, so police sent their officers from another direction. A bit of a pincer movement, and they told him in certain terms to pack up and come back on Monday. There's the new directory. About that was taken when September last year, just after I think the M25 was open, and you can see quite clearly there it's offset to one side, and so that's all about the volume of traffic in different directions. At one stage I know we said we'd been delayed until the spring 26, and that was all because of some pretty awful weather, just when we needed to move an awful lot of earth back in the winter of 23-24. But anyway, last year, conversely, we had a really good year, so we won some time back, so M25 fully opened August. What's the next one? Gyratory opened at the same time, December A3, and January, both Painshill and Nottingham Park round that. There's still work going on, there's still, particularly at night, there's overnight lane closures, there's some snagging to be dealt with, there's things like fencing, there's a lot more planting to take place, so we have still got some closures, but overnight. Right, that's the last picture. I'm not sure how we're doing to time. There's 5 pictures up there, each one has a story behind it. Does anyone want to pick one of 5?
Exploding manure.
I'm going to take that picture out because every time I ever use it. Right, what happens? In the office, it was May, not last year, the year before, May 24. Message comes into the site office, a lorry had blown up at Junction 10. And of course, the moment you hear things like that, you immediately think of some sort of terrorist type activity. That's what the police thought, that's what the fire brigade thought, everybody did. So everything pitched up at junction number 10. And what had actually happened, it was a lovely Monday morning, warm, hot Monday morning, and the weekend had been hot as well. And what had happened, this lorry had loaded manure sometime either the previous week or over the weekend. It had gradually fermented during Sunday. He came down to junction 10, and I think the act of putting his brakes on just sort of shunted the whole stuff around. and it blew the safety lights up, and it discharged 3/4 of a tonne of manure out of the vent at the top. Two things about it. In that mess on the left of the lorry is a white Audi. You can't see it, but believe me, it's there. And secondly, we've got one of our own marshals just to the left of that. And if you watch this on video, milliseconds later, it was leaving it as fast as it could away. So, I'd say that on a project this size, there's all sorts of things happening. Two events, some of which are pretty serious, some of which are just, in the case of that, just a little bit on the light-hearted side. So there you go, that's a bit about subject 10, a bit about the Green Bridge, a bit about what we've been doing. I don't know how we're doing for time, more than happy to take questions. Any questions?
Jonathan, thank you very much indeed. I think a big round of applause for Jonathan. Fascinating presentation, I think you'll agree. We do have a little bit of time for questions. If you'd like to, if you have a question to ask Jonathan, there is a microphone halfway down the centre. Please walk up to the microphone and ask your question. I'm going to kick off just to warm things up a little bit. A few questions. Jonathan, what were the maximum number of people working on the project at its height?
Back in 2023, when we were building some of the structures, it hit about 450.
And they all lived on Nutbury Farm?
No. One of the conditions of the planning consent was that we didn't base people on the site. So, no, we didn't have people. Well, on odd occasions we had a small number, but it was no more than half a dozen caravans. For the majority of the time, it was people commuting in. And it's one of the issues that you've got with any kind of construction, where do you get your workforce? In the south of England, you've got a number of major towns here, so it's not too bad. But of course, a lot of them have to travel via the M25 to get to work, which isn't always the best experience. Or coming through Guildford, as I do, which is also great. So, and that was all the subcontractors as well. Yeah, Balfour Beatty are the main suppliers, but they rely on a multitude of subcontractors.
We're now in just about to come into March this weekend. What is there still left to do on the site, and when do you expect to finish?
Electrical work on various things. Anybody goes around Upton Park roundabout will know that the lights are on one side of the roundabout and not on the other. That is because there's a gas leak as you leave the roundabout and go towards Ripley. It smells of gas there ever since I've ever known the junction. The gas mains around often aren't great. As a consequence of that, UKPN won't liven up the electrical supplies for the traffic signal, the lighting. So that's a piece of work. There's certainly a lot of access. You know, we've built all these structures, all these big gantries and things. They've all got control cabinets that you need to get to. So quite a lot of access, safe access routes, they're being constructed at the moment. The non-motorised user route, we've just about finished the asphalting on the last sections of that. We still need to put some stone on the Cockrow Bridge, so that's ongoing. There's various snags that occurred, things which perhaps don't work as they might. Traffic signals at Upton Park roundabout are a first-class example of things not doing exactly what they're supposed to. Paynes Hill was the same just after Christmas. We had some of the software for that blew up. Then you've got works. Some of the sites we used at its peak, we used 10 different site compounds. So remediating them, pushing them all back as they were or as required by their landowners or Surrey County Council or Guildford or Elmbridge Borough Council, depending on who it is. So it's lots of stuff like that.
There's been a lot of excitement and interest about this Cockrow Bridge, the first heathland bridge in the UK. When do you expect it to be open to members of the public, and are you going to have some sort of official opening ceremony?
A couple of interesting questions there. We wanted it open in February. February's about to end. The rain has been one of the real issues, not from the point of view of the bridge itself. The stone we need, it's called triple rough stone, needs to come from a quarry down in Sussex. The quarry's been flooded. And it's quite a specific type of stone we want. Partly some of the big boulders on the bridge are triple rough stone, so we want to match that, we want to keep the aesthetics from that. Secondly, we need a horse track across the bridge, horse path, because horses can't go across Catholics. So that is still outstanding. I mean, I watched the weather today. With any luck, we were out of the worst of the rain, and we can get that finished. There's also an issue about how you hand over this. It's all of this MMU will go to Surrey County Council, so Surrey County Council needs to inspect the whole lot, confirm that they're satisfied with the edging, the pavements, the road signs. Yesterday I was out with them it's what's called a road safety audit. Within a month or 4 weeks of opening a piece of road, you need to carry out what's called road safety audit 3. That was at Paynes Hill and the A245 yesterday. That's with independent design engineers, it's with police, it's with Surrey County Council. So that's something that still needs to be done for the bottom part of the NMU, and so is inspection, just to confirm that they're happy with it, they're happy with the quality of work, the type of work, materials being used, all that kind of thing. So
what's your best estimate?
Until that those hoops are overcome. What we can't do is open just bits of it. You know, if we open a piece of the NMU and it probably feeds somewhere into somewhere that we've still got works going on, it defeats the whole object of it. I think March. I mean, target really is to have it open by Easter. And in terms of an opening event, yes, I think there will be one. What form that will take, I am not sure. Some of my comms colleagues are looking at that now. There's the angle of completing a major piece of civil engineering work and the traffic benefits, and there's that angle on the environmental benefits. And one mustn't underestimate the bridge. Sure, it's a bridge I've come to know very well, but that will be case studies written on that bridge for years to come.
Final question before I open it up to the audience. You talked about overnight working on several occasions. What was the longest period of time you had to stay awake to supervise?
When we started work in 2023, autumn 2023, we started taking down trees. Now, what did they call me? I can't remember what it was now. I made a conscious effort to go and turn up on site any time of day, any day of the week. Not to catch people out, but just so that I had an idea of what was going on, and you lead from the front, not push from this kind of way. So there was a certain amount of concern at one stage that I was out, and even now if I go out, it's not unknown for somebody goes to phone around and say, but it's not to catch people out, seriously. So it's because I'm, if you're responsible for something, you should know what's going on. So that's what I do, and that does include, if it's necessary to go to the middle of the night, 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock in the morning, that's what I'll do.
Okay, our first question for you, so you just tap the microphone and see if it's on. There's a switch on the microphone. If you could just push the switch, you should be live. Right, you need to get quite close to the microphone.
Is this close enough?
Yeah.
First of all, thank you very much for your very interesting presentation. My question is, why have traffic lights been introduced at Brockham Park roundabout when apart from people exiting south of the A3, not thinking that they're joining the roundabout and should give way, it all worked seemingly perfectly well with good flow of traffic. I think quite a few other people had the same question and was a here.
Perfect question. When we designed this scheme, we needed to take into account Guildford Borough Council plan and Woolwich Borough Council plan.
It wasn't in place then?
It was an emerging plan. So we still needed to take into account the emerging plan. I can't remember now off the top of my head when it finally became it was ultimately signed off as a plan. But we need to take into account those emerging plans, and that includes, amongst other things, Policy A35, which some of you will know is the development of the former Horsley Airfield site. The whole project was also against the design life up to 2037, so we needed to look at traffic flows, not just as they are now, where they would be in 2037. So it was taking that into account that those traffic signals were put in place. They certainly have not been working as they should have done, and today we saw probably the highest number of visitors to RHS, and we engaged a lot with RHS. My traffic signals engineers were out this afternoon looking at the way in which they're operating. The way I like it is if you buy a new laptop, buy a new computer at home, you need to get the settings right. You need to set it up for the English language, you need to set it up for cameras, and you need to set it up for griffles. It's no different from those lights. When we brought them to use in January, comparatively low volumes of traffic, certainly around the Christmas period, volumes of traffic built up a bit. It's only in the last couple of weeks, probably a week and a half, where the weather's improved, we've really started to see, particularly RHS numbers, coming out, and that has proved that in some aspects the lights aren't working as they should do. So engineers were out this afternoon, they've identified a fault with the lights as you come out of Ripley. They were favouring traffic coming out of Ripley onto the A3. That's an absolute fault with the system. That's now been rectified. And also, if anybody comes out of Horsley Lane, you were coming out into one set of lights almost immediately, the next set were all red. That was also wrong. So there's going to be more tweaks. We don't want to make too many adjustments and tweaks all at once, because you just lose track of what you've done with one and the effect it might have. We also have to take into account of what's going on, perhaps just a little more widely. As you come off the slip road, off the A3, the near side slip road is closed. That's because SGN are working on a gas main there. That's due to continue for a further period of 2 weeks. At least then that improves the exit off the A3. We've also got to take into account what's currently going on with the closure of the York Lane and the roads being closed south of Woking. So that's putting more traffic than we're seeing there as well. So give it a chance. It's not operating currently as it should do, but that's the criteria that it was, these were put in against. It was not necessarily where they are now. It's where we're going to be 2037.
Thank you. Would you like to put another question?
Of course.
Okay.
Please do.
What about the people of Ripley who are now faced with hundreds of, or even thousands of cars a day going through to get to to RHS? People coming from the south. Was there no other way? It suggested that, of course, they go out to the M25, turn around, and then go back down south to the Ockham Park roundabout to engage with the slip road or the side road into the RHS. But of course most people won't, and Google doesn't suggest that you go that way. It says go through Ripley.
Right. Why is Ripley see the volume of traffic it does? And this is where you just need to go on a road atlas or something and look at where Ripley sits. Ripley's problem is not the RHS, it's not the new road, it's not Junction 10. It's all about Woking and the conurbation of Woking. Anybody in Woking and the areas around it, the Woodlands, the whole lot, if they want to go to the M25 or to London, anywhere like that, they have two choices. One is Junction 10, one is Junction 11. Those are the only two ways out of Woking. So you've only got to stand at the roundabout at the southern end of Ripley to see the volume of traffic coming up through Send, or Newark Lane, or now as is happening down Leslie Lane, all feeding into Junction 10. I'm afraid, I think it's going to get worse this year, and the reason I say that, again, nothing to do with RHS, it's because of the major works at Junction 11, which will make Junction 10 a more attractive route for people coming out of Woking. Now, the works at Junction 11 are due to take place during the course of this year. Once that's improved, I think the flows will even out of it. But Ripley's problem is not RHS, and frankly, it's not Taylor Wimpey either. It's all about Woking and the ways out of Woking. So one at a time. Guys, just so I say one thing. Please, microphone, one at a time, if you would mind.
And may I say that it's the traffic going to the RHS, there are a lot of cars that do go to the RHS, and so it's only additive. I'll accept the point about Woking and taking people out of Woking to get them elsewhere, but I'm thinking of the additional traffic. There are huge numbers of cars, and we're not even in the summer yet when the overflow car parks come into use.
Again, your point is not completely dismissed, far from it. One then has to look at where the RHS visitors from, whether they come from London down the A3, whether they come clockwise, M25, anti-clockwise, or how many come up from the south. Now, I don't have those figures to hand, so I can't say what percentage comes from which direction. Then you've got to look at what our RHS's visitor numbers, average across the year or peak points in time. That will then start to give you a bit of a clue of the kind of volume of traffic that might be coming up from Guildford or points beyond. It was something that was considered very carefully in the planning stage of this scheme. We haven't touched on it today. The way in which we got a planning consent for this is via what's known as a development consent order. It's a statutory instrument. And that's because Junction 10 is regarded as a nationally significant infrastructure project. So we didn't get planning consent from Guildford Borough Council or Ambridge Borough Council. It comes directly from the Secretary of State. And the whole issue of traffic through Ripley was explored in some considerable detail. And this is a consequence of that traffic calming measures are due to be incorporated into Ripley Village during the course of this year. I had a meeting with Horsley Parish Council members just 2 days ago, going through the current proposals that are on the table. So the idea of those of traffic calming is not to make Ripley difficult for the local people, the people who live there and work there and need to pass there for, but it's to act as to discourage them from using Ripley as a shortcut. Now, I come up from Guildford in the morning, from the other side of Guildford. And when I get to the Send Junction now, I have a choice whether I stay on the M20 to get to my site compound, whether I stay on the A3, do a U-turn around the roundabout and come to Parkland. And sometimes I'll use one, sometimes I'll use the other. What I tend to do is just have a look at where the traffic is. So it's faster, particularly when the works are going on at the other end of the Ripley. It's actually faster to go to Junction 10. Now the Junction's working, and I accept that the real peak times that they even now, the Junction doesn't flow as well as it could, but that's dependent on the M25. If it can't discharge on the M25, the Junction can't work. So it's an interesting question. As I say, it was explored. It was explored in some considerable detail during the planning, and that's why there is this requirement to carry out some traffic calming. And the nature of that traffic calming is still under discussion both with Surrey County Council and Ripley Council, and it will also have to be the involvement of Guildford Borough Council as the planning authority.
Perhaps we could have the next question there, please. Questioner.
Yes, from Guildford Borough Council, Councillor, and I think we from Surrey County Council as well. So we get asked a lot of questions by residents in terms of, particularly maybe like you yesterday when we could take the pressure off Rickley High Street, and it certainly could take the pressure off some of the traffic, perhaps from coming from Clarendon and through the Horsley's.
If I am not mistaken, the land which was needed for that, there's a, it was either required by, I can go from my say, I can't remember now, specifically with this purpose in mind. As you go down the A3, there are a number of junctions where the slip roads are in one direction only, and the logic behind that is, it goes back in time, I'm afraid I don't know. But putting London-facing slips in Road Common would probably do more for Woking, more for Ripley than just about anything else. What it might unfortunately do, but I've always got to look at the sort of unintended consequences of some of these things. It would probably put more traffic through Send, because it would become a more obvious route onto the M25, so onto the A3 and the M25. So one has to consider that. And coupled with that is also why, as part of the scheme, did we put south-facing slips at Ockham Park. And again, there's several reasons for that actually, but one of them is the unintended consequence. You suddenly create a route through Horsley, from the direction of Leatherhead through Horsley, and a fast route into Guildford. So it's looking at, sometimes you can look at what's going on immediately local to it. Sometimes you just need to zoom out a little bit and start to look at some of your traffic modelling and see where they could actually go from and to. But the road common slips, they were in National Highways programme. The way in which National Highways works, it carries out work on the instruction of the Department of Transport. So the Department of Transport will look around the motorway network in England and certain other major A roads, A3 being one. And they will prioritise a list of work, a list of projects. And if the Department of Transport says to National Highways, go and develop a scheme to put south-facing slips in, that's exactly what we would do. So north-facing slips. But it's a matter very much for the Department of Transport. It's not, National Highways can run the projects and manage these pieces of infrastructure, but it's not down to us to determine which junctions or which areas attract the funding.
Okay, and just, it's a personal question about the Ockham roundabout. Obviously there are plans in from the RHS to take over the Nutman compound and use that as a car park or whatever. I think it's predominantly going to be a car park. So that is going to give a regular additional exit onto that roundabout. And how is that going to be compensated for?
We're certainly on water that I'm not sure I'm the best one to answer. As part of the planning application, the RHS has put in traffic modelling data, which I know Surrey County Council have been reviewed. I think it's been a couple of iterations of it. In terms of the Nutmeg compound, when we set it out, it has a car park in it because that's what we needed. So RHS acquired the land and put in the planning application, as you quite rightly say. There's a couple of things they could use. Well, they could put cars on it, they could run a park and ride, they could use it to staff car placement, they could put coaches on it. That's a matter for RHS. I'm not, although I engage with RHS, I say regularly, and similarly Guildford and various other, I can't, I don't think, answer that particular question because I'm just not cited sufficiently on the planning application and what they're doing.
Okay, thanks.
Sorry about that.
Thank you. I'm the County Councillor representing Send and West Clandon, other places. And I want to go back to the four-way junction at Burn Common, which in 2016 was regarded as urgent. It was a high priority. Now, I'm interested in what you say about the Department of Transport, but things have changed an awful lot because there is a potential, I think everyone in this room would hope that it doesn't come about, there's a potential for at least 6,000 new houses in the eastern villages of Guildford, from Wisley right down to Send. And frankly, all of these roads, relatively small roads going through villages, will suffer. And what will happen to the new Junction 10, wouldn't be equipped to know. But it is important. That will take out some of the heavy lorries, some of which currently come up Potter's Lane in Send, which is 8.5 foot wide at its narrowest point. And that has to be addressed, and we've been asked by the county council to close that road off in the A3. But that's not the whole solution. I do think you need to go back and look at that junction and all the other villages, what will take the traffic out of there. Because Send Marsh, West Clarendon and Ripley could become absolutely intolerable.
I wouldn't disagree with a word you just said. Over the Christmas period, the M27 was closed. It was fairly well publicised, and it was closed whilst a bridge was pushed into place on the M27. That project was it's a Hampshire County Council project. It was all about a housing development on the north side of the M27, just outside of Fareham. Now, of course, the sources of funding from different areas, be it local authority, be it the developers themselves, be it Department of Transport. So whether some of these other avenues should be explored, and again, I'm slightly outside the ground here. This is more a matter for perhaps Guildford Borough Council and the local planning authority to look at what measures, what are the true impacts of these kinds of developments, and what measures should be incorporated, what mitigation measures should be incorporated within those planning consents. I don't disagree with what you say at all. National highways are not necessarily adverse to, not adverse to north-facing slips that are common. The role of National Highways is to look after the strategic road network and ensure that goods flow around this country. It is for the roads, what network rail is for the railways, to ensure that goods come in at Dover or Heathrow or Gatwick or wherever else, or Southampton, and get fed into the major cities. That's the role of National Highways, is to operate, maintain and develop that network. So we need to be satisfied that putting slips in that Buckingham did anywhere else on any other road aren't going to create a problem on the strategic road network. And hey, I've no reason to think that it would. That's the kind of process that we would need to go through. So I don't think National Highways are adverse to slip roads. It's just we do not have the direction from the Department of Transport to construct them at this point in time.
That's really helpful. Thank you.
Can I just ask, in terms of the M25 Junction 10, the actual roundabout, the white lining on the roundabout does not seem to make sense, and there's a mixture of dashes and dots, and people seem to follow the dashes, cutting across the people following the dots. And then when we come to joining the A3 southbound, both lanes on the roundabout merge into one, which means that there's no point being in either lane because you're going to end up in the same lane. And you've also got traffic approaching from the near side, coming off the M25 that you can't see because you're in the driver's side. So can you perhaps explain the thinking as to whether anything's going to be done about it?
Did you notice on Monday morning that some of the lines changed? We had sorry guys, don't laugh like that. I don't appreciate it. And B, it's not true. We have to strike a balance. The standards which we have to work with, it's called Design Manual for Roads and Bridges, and we have some pretty competent guys both within our design engineers and within National Highways Safety Engineering Standards looking at designs. And I mentioned it a few moments ago, we also have this road safety audit. The road safety is also in various stages. Stage 1 and 2 are both at some part of the design stage, so they've reviewed it, completely independent to National Highways. And then finally, when it was brought into use back in August last year, that's police, that's independent designers, it's the local authorities. Do I think they're optimum? I think they could be improved. What we need to do though is allow the traffic to settle down. If we start making changes, you know, a month afterwards, just on the basis of feedback, you know, we start painting out some of the white lines. You can never completely get rid of white lines unless you burn them off, and that way you damage the surface as well. So what we did over this last weekend was make some incremental changes. We are going to allow the dust to settle, see what improvements they make. I spent week before last at some length with my design engineer, but also my own safety engineering standards. We've looked at aerial photographs, we've looked at aerial video footage, we've looked at in-car camera footage to see what those lines are doing, where the traffic is going. Your point, the one which I think you're probably referring to is you come off the M25 from the Church direction and you're wanting to head down the A3. It doesn't seem quite intuitive if you follow the long lines, you're heading back on the M25 heading towards Cobham. Please give us a bit of chance with that. We certainly get correspondence, and I keep an eye on almost all the correspondence which comes in. I'm well aware that some people don't think we've got the lines right, but we want to make incremental changes rather than just try and make sweeping changes, which again, you've also got to think about the unintended consequences. You do one thing which appears to be the right thing and find it totally upset something else. So your point is well made, and I accept that some people don't like it. Just please watch this space. And I say we did make some changes over the weekend to some of those lines.
If I could just ask, if you could consider, as you come off the roundabout to go to the A3, all the lanes are fed into one,
Yep.
which means that the inside lane is then empty. So there is, instead of having a give way for the traffic coming off the M25 from Godstone, they've now got the lane, but it just doesn't seem to work. I go down Old Lane to come here, and I've got to first of all merge in with the other traffic, then I've got to look over the shoulder to try and get back into the other lane that I want to be in.
Yep.
And I just don't quite understand why the M25 traffic can't be made to give way at that point.
Because a key part of this scheme was always to create free-flowing left lanes, and that's exactly what there is in place. I mean, again, I exactly what you mean. I drove it this morning, and as everything funnels into one, if you're going down to Guildford or even Ripley, you can quite cheaply stay in lane 2. I accept that if you're going down Old Lane, you really do need to be in the left-hand lane, and as soon as you're coming off the roundabout, you need to be looking at your wing mirrors to see if there's anything coming off the M25 from completely accept that. The whole issue of the naming of highways is merge and diverge. How you come off of lanes, how lanes separate, diverges, and how they come back together again, which is merges. The combination of lanes, of ghost islands, of where you give way and where you don't. It's quite a science, an art. Once you get to know it, I think it's okay. But I completely accept that the old lane coming off, if you're coming up from sort of Heathrow, or even coming off of the A3 from further north, you do have to have your wits about you. One of the, I said earlier that we closed 10 different entrances and exits off of the A3. Old Lane at one stage was looked at whether we close it completely. And what would be the impact of that if we had done that? And I say it's the only, strictly speaking, it doesn't merge onto the A3, it merges onto a slip road. But it was in the balance as to whether we shut that road completely. And we then had to look at, well, okay, what would then happen to, not just up and right, but traffic down towards towards Effingham and Loughton. What's the alternative route? So it's a difficult one. I say, I wouldn't dispute your point. You have to keep sharp with that in your mirror if you want to be in the left-hand lane, and I've done it often enough to know you do. Need to keep sharp with it.
I think we've got time just for one more question. It's gone 9 o'clock. I want to wrap things up, and I believe, Jonathan, correct me if I'm wrong, you're happy to stay on for a few minutes more and do a one-to-one if anyone's got any specific suggestions or advice to Jonathan in terms of merging and demerging. So, last question, please.
Thank you. I represent the people who don't live in Horsley. I actually live on the Weybridge bike week side of A3. And so I've experienced absolutely everything that anybody could throw at a driver over the last 3 or 4 years. And indeed, I've been doing it for 10 years. And hopefully, if the partner I happen to live within Horsley accepts it, I hope to be doing it for a few more years. Here's my problem. It's one of safety. You join the Pains Hill roundabout, and you now drive over south. I'm going to the Lockham roundabout. I've been doing it for years. It looks really good what's there. And I've defended everything you guys have been doing with people who criticise you. It's been a fabulous experience watching it happen.
There's a butt here somewhere.
But I'm not standing up here for my health. It's a serious safety question. I have to get into the inside lane of the 2 lanes that are going to go over the M25. So when I'm over the M25, I'm ready to go to the left-hand lanes where I can to go down the Lockham Road. My problem is this: I've made it to the inside lane of the 2 that are going to go over, and I always play this game, serious game, looking in my wing mirror, and I see the cars coming past me at a rate of knots. And I have a little bet with myself, Gatwick or Heathrow. At the same time, I'm also looking at the 2 lanes you've created to go down to the M25. And I've got this one on the inside. He's not going down to the M25. He's going to continue to do this across the lanes. Now, we've seen this happen before you did these changes. And there's one of the reasons, the principal reasons you did this, was to make it safer at this intersection. My question is, do you think you've done that? Do you think you've achieved that?
So you joined the A3 up Pains Hill roundabout?
Yes.
Right, okay, you will have done that. Before you ever started, you come down the slip road and you had to move over 1 lane to your right to get over the A3 bridge, to get over the M25 bridge.
Yeah.
If you come down the Pains Hill slip road now, in the right-hand lane, you have to cross 1 lane to get onto the M25 bridge. What has changed? The only thing that's changed is that you don't have multiple entrances on your left-hand side, particularly the Hazelwood campsite one, which was needle turning in and up. So you've got no prospect at all of people slowing down or speeding up. And you've also got multiple overhead gantries, making it quite clear to any driver which lane should they be in. You have far more thinking time and far more information. But your actual manoeuvre to cross the bridge is no different now than it was before you started.
I'm not the problem. I do it properly. My problem is the people travelling 80 miles an hour down the outside who want to go to Gatwick.
The point was, they always did. What's changed? It was a 70 mile an hour road before, it's a 70 mile an hour road now. Before we started, you had to cross 1 lane to your right. Now, you have to cross 1 lane to your right. What's changed and where's the...
Well, that's my question. What has changed?
Well,
the reason you did it was for safety reasons, because there were some really serious crashes
Indeed.
at that intersection. Do you think what you've laid out has addressed all those issues and it's going to be safer now than it was in the past?
Yes, without a shadow of a doubt. And one of the reasons I say that, go back to one of those slides I had earlier on. 200, on average, for 5 years before we started this work, 244 collisions of some sort or another at Junction 10 or within a kilometre of it. I don't have figures right now because I've lost the CCTV cameras that I have on site. But in the 17 days after the whole lot was opened, when I still had the access to the cameras, 2 collisions. 2 collisions in 17 days from 2 collisions every 3 days. So I know that the junction and the way in which it is operating significantly safer now than it ever was. I know that. And a key point, go right back to one of the early slides. The key part of this scheme wasn't just the widening of the roads, it was the technology to get people, to give people information so that they have as much thinking time as they possibly had. And the distance between Painshill Junction and Junction 10, I can't remember off the top of my head, it's not quite a mile, I don't think. You've got plenty of time to think, to be looking at lanes, to getting your own speed, to matching. You say 80 miles an hour, I'm sure some people do, the majority don't. The majority do stick within the speed limits. So if you're bringing your speed up, you can be at 70 miles an hour by the time you get to the end of the Painshill slip road, so you can more than match the traffic on the road, on the main line. So yes, I'm perfectly satisfied. And if I wasn't satisfied, if I didn't think this scheme was right, I'd have quit. And I'd have quit 8 years ago.
Well, I do hope you're absolutely right.
Well, I know that I'm right from the collision rate. I know that the amount of feedback that we get, that a number of people said, oh, they never thought it would work, and hey presto, it is actually working, and my journey to it is a lot easier. I just see the amount of feedback I get, and I see the accident, that accident rates I saw, and I can get current accident figures from my colleagues in Godstone if I wanted to. But I know that's the information I've got. We brought the Junction 10 into use in August last year. August, September, October, November, December, January, February, March. It's been operating for 7 months, 6 months.
I think on that note, we'll call the meeting to a close. Once again, I'd like to thank Jonathan Wade, Senior Project Manager. YouTube links up here on the screen at the moment. You might take the opportunity to take a quick photograph of those so you can have a look when you get home. And as I said before, I think Jonathan will be around for a few minutes more if you want to ask him any personal questions. As you can see, we had to put an awful lot of extra seats out tonight to go with